Welcome, everyone. I'm Scott Logan, the CMO of Amplify, and this is the AI for CX Virtual Summit, where we bring you the latest insights and best practices around AI in the customer experience. A quick word from our sponsor, Amplify. If this is your first session, great. If not, then I'll go through this as fast as I can. At Amplify, we unify all your data from structured, unstructured sources, voice, email, to virtual agent, social, internal systems, flat files, all into a single view of performance with a single view of your data. Amplify delivers role-specific insights and AI recommended next best actions to increase agent performance and coaching. Our comprehensive CX suite includes everything from auto QA to AI-powered coaching and gamification. Over 10,000 teams worldwide use Amplify to boost productivity, improve customer experiences, and drive better results in sales, support, collections, and beyond. Before that, we'll get some details out of the way of the run of show. We'll provide a link to a landing page with the recording and the slides in the days following the webinar. For the session, we'll answer all your questions at the end, but please do chat them in as you think of them along the way, and we will address them. This session is titled AI plus Human, the new power duo in the customer experience. This is one of my favorite sessions of the summit because there is that blend. It's not going to be all AI. It's not going to be all human empowered by AI. There is going to be some motions where you have both. This session is brought to you by two special guests from Infinite Green Consulting, John Blum, Infinite Green's co-founder. I'm assuming you chose that name yourself, but very cool. And then we have Valerie Rodriguez, who's the chief illuminator, even more fancy. It's okay, I got to one up John's title here, or that's actually yours, John, and then you're the chief influencer. I was getting those mixed up with the two ILs next to
All
him.
right.
Hey, John co-founded Infinite Green in 2009, where they lead successful client engagements in many technology and experience areas, including domestic, international spreads of businesses and all sizes of companies from SMB to Fortune 10 to 500 companies. This has resulted in 32 billion in value for their clients in the form of improved sales, cost efficiencies, flexible technical solutions, differentiated customer experiences, satisfaction, and loyalty. That number is huge, but I don't doubt it as I was introduced to you all the way back in 2011. So good work on helping folks out there. And then Valerie spent the front half of her career or more in Las Vegas, creating guest experiences at some of the top casino resorts, including the MGM Grand, Cosmopolitan, where the customer experience is really the epicenter of where all this comes from. And if you see all the movies, or I don't know if any of you are high rollers enough to experience some of these VIP experiences. I know my $100 at the table isn't cutting it, but she spent the last 6 years as the chief influencer at Infinite Green, sharing best practices in CX across all industries and use cases. So, with that, we'll finally get over to the presentation and our stars of the show, John and Valerie.
Thanks, Scott. I appreciate it. It's good to be here, and thanks everyone for joining. Really quick, just to tag on a little bit there, we've got a QR code on this slide of where our website is. So if you want to know a little bit more about who we are, what we do, and all of the chief eyes on our team. And yes, Scott, we did name ourselves. And there's a good reason for that. We wanted a flat organization that all of the team members that we have can make decisions for the best of the client, the best of that customer experience, and the best in any situation. We hire leaders, and that's what they do. And that's where we found Valerie, which was just a fantastic find from ours. And she was actually a client of ours and decided that this was something that she really wanted to be a part of a bigger way. And she really certainly has done that. As Scott said before I hand it over to Valerie, we've been in business 16 years. We've had over 350 clients. All of our business is referrals. We do really strong, a good job with our customers based on what their needs are, and we help them get over and beyond a lot of their own internal hurdles or things where we know the answer is already in the room before we get there, but we just help get our clients enabled to reach above and beyond that. And I think that really layers in a lot of what this session is going to hopefully bring out a little bit and give you a little bit of an example on. But we've actually been actively in AI projects for half of our existence. So 8 years ago, we did a big project around a Medicare education conversational bot, if you will, and really learned a lot of where the initial technology of what we're now calling and what we all hear day in and day out of AI was really starting to scratch the surface at human enablement and accelerated technology experiences. So we look forward to going through that with you today. And Valerie, I'd love for you to share a little bit more about yourself before we get into the topic.
Cool. Thank you, John. And thanks, Scott and Amplify team for inviting us to participate in this virtual summit. It is a topic that we're super passionate about. As Scott mentioned, with my background in hospitality, service is really at the core of everything that I care about and everything that I know, really. And really, our entire team is operators at heart. Our company is really an experience design company. And we're constantly balancing process, technology, and people in the organization. When we talk about humans and the AI component and how to blend those capabilities really well, it really is an art, not a science. And a lot of the things we talk about is it's the design, not the tech, but the tech enables the experience. And we're super excited to talk to you about this topic a little bit today. I'll share some of briefly the agenda so you know what to expect. John will go through a little bit of kind of the history of how we got to where we're at today, a little bit of where we're going, and how that really impacts organizations, why it's important right now, what the common CX challenges are that customers are feeling and organizations are experiencing across the board. We'll go through some common AI myths, and we're going to try to bust them together. And then we'll actually talk about what is this power duo and what does it look like when AI and humans are working really cohesively together. I will share a use case of an experience that I had with one of the resorts I used to work at and how what they did really well to be able to leverage the human component with modern technology. And then we'll talk about some best practices that you should think about if you're either embarking on an AI project or already down the line. These are some common pitfalls that we see and some things that you'll want to pay close attention to. And one of my favorite topics is the human-centered blueprint. As a people leader and a former people leader, this is something that, again, I'm incredibly passionate about how you can lead through any of these technology implementations and how to best do that to avoid disruption and to maximize all of the results.
So AI is here. I think one of the things that we've probably all seen movies and some of those things where it's not just a marketing vehicle. AI is real and it's on the ground right now. And what is that blend with the human connection and AI? And from our perspective and my perspective personally, I think humans are just wired around this innovation. So if you think about blending the two, innovation is something that as a leader or as an operator, we all desire. And that doesn't just require the best technology or the best technology for a situation, but it really requires humans to elegantly design those technical experiences so that customers, agents, everyone can get more out of the time and energy that they spend in interacting with brands and services and products out there. But really, when you think about it, the origin of our own human innovation, and I'll even go beyond before kind of AI and technology, we started with those simple tools. We started with fire right at the bottom of the pyramid here. And we started with simple tools that got us just a little bit more mechanical advantage or leverage so that we could do a few more things when we didn't need the help of other people. And all of that kind of evolved us into this automated society. When you think about AI, are you thinking about just automation? Are you thinking about learning? Are you thinking about those enhanced experiences? But when we started evolving from those basic tools, we started to do more with less. But really, when that automation and the things that come down to where are we today, we believe that the orchestration of those experiences, the tech, the human elegant design and everything equals that better CX overall and EX for the employees. And so the future is really above that. It's becoming limitless where you want to go, but it's limitless with control. If you think about why we innovate, I think the why is always an important piece. If you think back to the 4-minute mile, it took so long for anybody to get to that 4-minute mile. And now there have been over 2,500 people that have eclipsed that 4-minute mile. And now we're talking about the 2-hour marathon, which is another feat that's was way beyond anyone's thought process. Or if you think about going to the moon, we did that back in the 60s, and now we're talking about going to Mars, right? It's always one step beyond that. And We develop a computer to beat a human at a complex game like chess or even Jeopardy, if you want to go back to that, Big Blue. And really, faster, stronger, better is in our DNA. And it's how we've evolved over time, but we can't get there alone. This has to be not just human enabled, it has to be technology enabled, and it's an and strategy. So a lot of what we're going to talk about today is really more of that and strategy. What are some of the challenges that we're facing with this blend of humans and AI when it comes to CX? And a couple of these things that you all are probably very familiar with and more than likely live in and day out. There's this customer element of everything that we do and why we exist. There's people behind that try to serve those customers. The systems they use are becoming more complex and more enabling. However, it has to be orchestrated, as I stated on the last slide, and designed appropriately so it's not harder to get to that information. And then, of course, the foundational data. The great things about contact centers, if you will, and the hard things about contact centers is that you have so much data, but you have good data. And when Scott was talking about our $32 billion in benefit and value that we've driven for our clients, we have over 16 KPIs that we self-manage and self-report on to get to some of those numbers for our clients. Now, they don't all have that mentality of asking us to deliver on all those, but that's how we get to those numbers. So again, if you think about that customer reality, we're in a one-click environment. We're in this one-click Amazon checkout go environment. That's hard for companies to design around. A lot of times we find ourselves in this 1-800 graveyard, as I call it, of I didn't really design this elegant experience across the 800 environment to get to the right place at the right time. So I'm going to make it really challenging for you to get there. And that's a customer reality that we all live day in and day out. The agent stress around how do I alt tab to the next screen and swivel chair while we're still trying to develop these more elegant interfaces around CRM and where can I find the information in a single view or in a couple of views is hard. And again, costs for those systems and making sure that the data that we're leveraging for making decisions and delivering service is organized in a way that we can actually get it done appropriately and not have a customer experience or an agent experience be really challenging to get there. So I think that's the key around these challenges, but I think Valerie and I are going to share a little bit about how we improve the CX market.
Yeah, thanks. Because of all those challenges, there's so much excitement around AI, right? And there's a lot of buzz, but at the same time, there's a lot of fear and there's a lot of misunderstanding across all industries. So what I'm showing now is some of those myths that exist. And the reason I want to debunk these myths is really because they're not just water cooler talk or organizational chatter. They're actually adversely shaping how organizations are designing, deploying, and adopting AI, or not at all, right? That people are staying away, and the cost to do nothing is pretty significant also. I think it's important to run through these quickly, starting with AI is impersonal. People think that AI is creating distance between companies and their customers, but when it's used well, it's actually helping us connect deeper, right? It's enabling personalization and at scale. So with context, with pattern recognition and things that a human or an agent may typically miss, AI is able to serve that up to the agent or serve that up to the employee so that they can truly create a personalized experience for the customer and do it so in a much easier, faster, and more consistent way. AI is for technology teams, certainly not anymore. It's really a tool for every role. We're talking a lot this week about how AI is being leveraged for CX, but it's touching every department in an organization. And oftentimes what we're seeing now is that the AI projects are actually being initiated and led by business stakeholders, and IT is actually taking a back seat for the operational deployments. We like to think AI is plug and play, and a lot of AI marketing out there is that it's plug and play, right? We can stand this up for you in an hour or a day or something like that. But the reality is that AI projects are actually forcing us to rethink our current processes. If we just recreate our current processes with new technology, you won't get the outcomes you're looking for. Plug and rebuild your processes. So yes, the tools are pretty easy to stand up, but certainly thinking about the design does take some strategy and a little bit more than just a plug and play. So today we're talking about humans and AI. Of course, we don't think AI is replacing humans. Quite frankly, every AI investment request is going to likely have some type of labor savings or labor component accompanied with it. But what we're going to talk about later is how AI is assisting and enhancing humans and where it's still critical to have human involvement, especially in the deployment aspect. And it's just shifting the way teams are working, not eliminating the need for humans entirely. AI pace of learning is really dictated on your pace. It can learn fast, absolutely, but it really depends on the volume that you're running through the AI technology, as well as how frequently you're actually training the tool. So I would say that you are actually at the driver's seat of the AI pace of learning and growth. So you're setting that pace. And then lastly, this one is, some people believe AI is always right and just like blindly trust it. And others are like, AI is never right and have no trust. So I would say that these extremes about the accuracy of AI, they're very dangerous and they're both actually false. AI is really as good as your design and your data. So it's the human logic, it's your data. That's the true impact on AI's accuracy and autonomy. So let's talk about this power duo, really understanding how AI is teaming up with our agents and our teams. And with the right balance, it can truly be a game changer. You'll see on the right-hand side, humans are bringing really quality empathy, creativity, and contextual understanding to situations. They also bring real life and relatable stories or experiences. Whereas AI strengths are speed, scale, pattern recognition at scale, and data and automation. This is intended to demonstrate that it's really a handshake. It's not a handoff from one to the other. And leveraging both to serve our customers, we're augmenting each individually. So instead of just faster and more consistent services to our customers, we're also providing more meaningful experiences. And here's just some of the outcomes that we're seeing by leveraging the strengths of the power duo. All of these things actually create space for your teams to focus on what really matters. We're removing some of the transactional monotony from their day-to-day, and we're allowing them to lead more with empathy and with compassion, which really ends up being the ability to create more genuine connections with your customers, and at the end of the day, more loyalty. So here is a case study where I wanted to share a really great example that I think of where we achieved that balance of really strong human component and really great new AI modern technology at the time. And so this balance of the power duo, it was when this was a modern luxury resort that I used to work at, and they didn't just add a chatbot. They created a digital team member with their own carefully curated persona. And so this created something like a really nice talking point for our guests. But one of the reasons that it was so successful is because of the employee advocacy of the tool. It's a lot easier for a human to build trust than it is for an AI agent to build trust, right? Because of that deep connection, the empathy that we talked about, and all of those things. I think one of the things that this team did really is from the moment that guests arrived, it was really a handoff from the front desk agent saying they would introduce Rose, which is the digital persona, as a colleague, right? So it's like, text Rose if you need anything. Just creating that introduction from an employee that you've already built trust with allowed the guests to feel confidence in using the tool. And then once the guests started to engage, they started to experience something that was different and unique, and it created memorable moments for them. So it wasn't just a deflection tool. It was actually an experience enhancer. And so that's what companies are really looking for when they're implementing some AI, is they're looking for it not to just recreate, not to just deflect, but how can I elevate the service that we're already providing to our customers or to our guests? The other thing that happens here that demonstrates the power duo is if Rose is able to handle transactional and informational requests, there's also a seamless handoff when a human does need to be involved. So providing that context, that understanding, we call it agent assist, and really making it easier and faster for the agent to support that guest, because we've been able to already extract a lot of key information, context, and we don't need the customer to repeat themselves. We're eliminating friction from an otherwise experience that would have friction. And then going back to the myths about AI being impersonal, this example is a really good one of how Rose helped to create deeper relationships with customers and guests because of her ability to automate and scale. Whereas an employee at the resort, once you check out or once you leave, your experience really stops with that employee. They don't have the bandwidth. If they were to text all of the guests that they interacted with daily, they would never not be working. So having Rose be able to continue doing that long after checkout, it really strengthened and deepened those relationships. And business benefit is increasing spend, increasing visits, and creating more of those touch points on a customer journey. So I would say that a thoughtful and strategic deployment is a key element here, as well as the human and the technology component. And then John's going to talk a little bit about some of the most common pitfalls that the customers go through when doing any AI deployment, as well as some best practices that you should strive for.
Thanks, Valerie. And as a user of Rose in the past, I will say from my experience, it was great. And being in Vegas and not always sleeping at 10 o'clock at night, I was in need of information or had a couple of things that I needed that I didn't have to pick up the phone or go down to the front desk to get. And to your point, Valerie, about going beyond after that experience, it really made that experience top of mind when I had selection choice when I came back to Vegas. It really does drive that loyalty and relationship if done correctly. And some of the things that when we were talking a little bit before about this whole AI and human power duo, I really go back to probably the early 2010s when companies were saying, oh, call centers are going to be obsolete because we're automating so many things. And we saw that as an interesting, from our seat at least, an interesting perspective. What happens in that environment is you automate all the easy things and it puts more reliance on the humans that have to take those harder, more challenging interactions and make a beneficial situation out of it. And so that's something that I think AmplifAI has done really well, just to give a little plug here on taking a lot of that disparate, some automated, some not automated, but what's that next best action? What are some things that we can do to enable the agent to get farther down the road with a little bit of a help or an assist from the capability? And so I think AmplifAI is really exemplifying some of that and strategy that we've been talking about. But there are common pitfalls when it comes to projects. You can have the best intentions, and unfortunately, something can go sideways. And some of the things in our 8 years of working through AI projects that we've seen, probably frequent flyer, if you will, is companies that pick the technology before they really identify long-term where they want to go with their customer experience or their business case, and how do you blend all those together. And some of those misaligned solutions that don't add value or solve real pain points could be in the, I just worked with this tech before, so it's got to work here too in my new company or under this situation. And so really understanding where your beneficial use cases are for that and strategy, and not just the how many calls or contacts or how many interactions can we get out of the system as a deflect is one dimensional. So thinking through those, we've found that if we start with that end experience in mind, you really then back into the appropriate technology for you. So you're not overbuilding, you're not underbuilding, but you're really layering in that short term now, how do I get off the bench? What's my medium term enabling training and curating of that content and that technology and that experience to how is that going to enable me long term? And really, when you go into an RFI or RFP with that technology, you need to know how they're investing in the platform that will enable you to get to your goals as well. So make sure you understand your use cases and the things that you really want to tackle from an overall experience lens first before picking that technology. The next thing I would say, I would go down to underestimating change management. We like to bring disparate groups of people together in workshop formats when we're talking about this topic and when we're really trying to define what that end state experience looks like. And change management is really communicating at the appropriate level so that everyone understands the expectation but can write themselves into that story. And if you see poor adoption or disparate or disjointed experiences that have no ending place, we laugh a little bit about this, and because we've lived this reality before, we feel like contact centers in some companies end up being like the janitor service that cleans up after the elephants in the parade. Like, you just have all of these things that just happen and they get left on the road. And if you call the 800 number, you should be able to get all those things covered. And underestimating change management can be a part of that debt as well, if you will, and getting to a better experience. So communicating clearly, opening up the environment to not only your technology teams, but marketing, sales, operations, executive, bringing those conversations together. We even see, what's your definition of AI? Is it just automation? Is it automation with a long-term learning and a goal of X, Y, and Z? Or what is that? And creating that common language from above so the leadership can really rally and get their teams rallied around what our definition of AI is, what our experience goals are and that journey is, and where we want to go with it in bite-sized pieces over the next several quarters or next several years, et cetera, which will be enabled by this partnership with this technology or with this service group, is a very powerful message from a top-down perspective, while the operators and the trenches are really trying to execute from a bottoms up. So don't underestimate change management. Really drive the continuity of the conversation, create the definitions that you need to make that reality. And so again, make sure those leaders are sending the right messages to create the umbrella so that you can work in that environment. And Valerie's going to share a little bit about some of those leadership qualities as we go. Valerie?
Awesome, thanks. Yeah, so how do we become leaders in this space? Helping others that are not as far down this path. One of the things I like to call forward is these 6 levers of human-centered AI leadership. So just for the sake of time, I may not go through all of them, but this holds a really special place in my heart because the leadership component of bringing a project like this to life is so critical. And the companies that get this right are the ones that incorporate these leadership principles at the core. So as you look around this wheel, like all of these are common leadership practices. And even John called out purpose, but defining your use cases and your purpose and your why before selecting the tool. It's critical at the initiation of the project as well as carrying through your entire strategy. Involve your people early and often, that they're the experts in your design and the execution. And so by involving them and having them be a part of the solution will help create a much better outcome. And then I'll just skip to trust. So we talked about the AI myths, and there's a lot of fear that is surrounded by AI and what that's doing to organizations and jobs and people. Trust is really built through communication, transparency and communication, providing clarity around the journey instead of allowing people to make up their own versions of the truth or jump to worst case scenario situations. So I'll just leave it there. Take a look at this wheel in fully, but leading with heart, intelligence, and intention helps create not only more successful teams, but more successful projects and more successful outcomes. Quick wrap up. A couple things we would just want you to take away. AI enhances, not replaces human touch. The best design and execution starts with leadership, trust, and communication. You can elevate team members by freeing them up to focus on their strengths and what they're really good at. And it is a lifestyle, it's not a project. Start small, but certainly start if you haven't yet. That now is the time, as John mentioned, and certainly you don't have to boil the ocean with your first implementation, but you do have to stay connected to that purpose and stay connected to what you're trying to achieve. Celebrate all of the successes and also learn from all of your opportunities. Hey, Scott, I see you back on.
Yeah, the Q&A function or time, please use the Q&A function or the chat to put those questions over. So we'll start going through some here. I'll preface at first some of the data that we went over in the opening keynote session where AI agents have started to hockey stick a little bit, just a little bit, maybe not even hockey stick yet, but a bell curve style curve going up in what's being presented. And maybe not surprisingly, but maybe to some, that agent count is also going up, but not in the drastic amounts that we saw in years past, but it's still increasing. Now, where you do see the hockey stick is the number of interactions coming into the contact center, and there's just so many new ways to communicate with the company and with so many more robust solutions for self-service and now with the AI agents that are incorporated, so many more things can happen in tandem and folks are used to just doing things quickly instead of having to wait on hold like they used to have to do. Human agents aren't going away, but what are some of the spots that you're seeing AI being started in organizations, like a good safe starting point to make sure you don't burn customers with deploying an AI agent that maybe isn't ready or whatever. What are you seeing most common?
Yeah, I would say it's very similar to how I think back in like 2005 to 2010, where the first virtual agents came on board for voice. I think transactional or repetitive type interactions where they're very specific and the boundaries of the bumpers are really accurate, right? I know that this and financial services, banking, transactional level information is really a key part. And most companies that are around today have already done that, Scott. But I think in taking that a little bit farther is what's the next step that most callers today or customers today or who are texting or emailing or whatever are asking for after that transactional piece. So
Mhm.
teeing up some of those experiences and then layering in those brand value components that make companies different. Not all retail companies are alike, even in the same category. Not all financial services companies are alike. So layering in a little bit of the future of where we think this is going and just interpreting and guiding a little bit is a great way of thinking about how do I take just one more step out of the process so that I can validate or steer accordingly. Valerie, you just worked on a lab project, right, where you were doing some of that initial automation and initial AI engagement. What did you see there?
Yeah, I would say that where some companies may have been lagging on some of their self-serve opportunities, they've been able to curb jump some self-serve by infusing it into some of the automated and AI tools and things like FAQs where maybe we would try to deflect or try to self-serve in the past. Now it's creating an interaction, but it's creating an automated interaction instead. And that's an area where you can start to demonstrate value, demonstrate volume, pull reports, understand what is happening behind the scenes while building other high volume and high priority use cases.
Also, really quick, text and chat is becoming much more relevant in those use cases, Scott, because you can push content. And if you think about one of our Medicare example that I shared in the beginning, elderly or people maybe with disabilities that can't hear or can't interpret as fast as maybe an agent on the other end is trying to get through this long bit of information. If I push content to you, you can manage that speed of interaction much more on the customer's terms. And so teeing up some of those things, like in this case for Medicare, here's what the plan bumpers are. Here's where you've purchased in the past and where you've had good success or things like that. Because of a highly regulated environment like Medicare, it is really important to make sure the education is clear. But that transactional time of from education to buying a plan could be hours long. And so being able to push content and let the customer really manage the speed and the rate of which they ingest that information and then make decisions around it is another good area where it's a good blend between the human side and the technology side.
Absolutely. I'm going to address another question here. And this was addressed in several different sessions. So maybe you can add your perspective to it for this audience. With chatbots and all the different types of self-service that are out there, the contact center agents are getting a far heavier workload of the more complex scenarios, which, as a side note, as I see prior to being at Amplify, at a company that did AI agents, and that was actually how she got everyone on board with it, saying all those transactional things that you hate doing because they're so redundant and simple, you don't have to do those anymore. They're going to be handled finally efficiently by something else. But with that, there are more demands for able to answer more complicated questions and being able to level up. It's no longer you can have a just a subset of agents that are qualified enough to handle those. Now everyone has to handle those and right away in their ramping. I love this question because it leans into Amplify a little bit, but can you talk about how the human agents can use AI to cross this barrier of everyone needing to level up their knowledge?
Yeah, that's a good one. I think from an experience lens perspective, taking what happens prior to the agent being involved, sentiment analysis is a great one, right? We worked with a company that does pro tax services, and they left their IVR enabling voice as they were having their customers navigate through. And a lot of the interactions that they had, this was a $25,000 to $50,000 subscription. So these were CPAs that were calling in for very specific help around tax law and things. And their initial strategy was to put them through this complex, deep and wide IVR. And when we turned on the listening post, if you will, we blended what they were talking about to the IVR, believe it or not, into the sentiment analysis and part of the call wrap up from the IVR so that they could leverage that information, but not have to repeat it. And so I think the blend, and this really caters to the and strategy here of what is it that you know about the customer that you can add in and have ready at the fingertips without having to go back and go, okay, where did you start? Give me your social security number again. Let me go through this again, like what we've all been through before. And I think blending that into how I look forward is a little bit about what you were talking about there, where you take the repetitive tasks out of there, but you keep the context of where they've been and the breadcrumbs of where they've been. So you have the reality of it. And I think that enables customer service agents really well, because I always say that customer service agents are some of the smartest people in the world because they've had to do their job without the best tools, the best tech, under the gun for timing, and all the other things that make their job really hard. If we go back to our barrier slide or our challenges slide, we can see all those there. But anyway, that's my experience with where it complements and where it can be very successful using some of those later kind of enabling technologies like sentiment analysis, wrap up, the auto QA functions, and some of those things that really give you the blend of the experience, the automation, and then what's needed going forward.
Yeah. And I'll just add that the skill set of an agent is changing, right? And that's not new to AI. That's with really any implementation of technology. We see that shift of where I used to need agent skills and where I need agent skills now. And I think Scott's absolutely appropriate to identify that tools like Amplify support the ability to mimic and identify what makes a great agent, so that you can level up the rest of your team, and then also update hiring guides, things like that, so that you're bringing the right people on the team that are going to work the best with these situations.
Yeah, and we see this scenario quite often because of the question and how it was laid out. And there are a couple sets of tools that you can use. Now there's RTA, real-time assist, which we actually don't offer. We allow all the engagement stuff to be over on the CCaaS side or the contact center engagement platform side. And that gives you that Google Maps instant assist on here's what to address right then and there. If it's more complicated, it can go ping that query and get you some information. And then for the more long tail stuff, which is where we live on the post call side, when you do have all those engagements ingested, whether it be through chat, email, phone, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. We'll say, okay, based on everybody's performance, we see exactly what each agent on an individual level needs to improve on. And then the AI knows where that person is struggling the most based on the business outcomes that you're looking for in the system that you've programmed, and says this person needs to work on this specific thing. so that they can get their results up because it'll be different for everybody. And you used to be able to, not be able to, but you used to just coach everybody on the same thing every month or the new training program for this month. Now you have that tailored coach for each or coaching plan for each person. And then on the coaching side, maybe you identify because we do coaching the coach that some team leads maybe aren't good at bringing someone's skill level up on that specific tactic or that new type of inquiry that you're getting a higher volume of that you weren't before. And so you can say, okay, we need to have this coach step over here because their team is always improving on these metrics. And then you can help your coaching level too to help the team more broadly. So there's different layers of what John was talking about to where you can have the real-time assist. Whenever I Google Map something, even if it's in my neighborhood, I can't get to it a second time unless I use the Google Maps again. And then you have the long tail learning experience where they now get specific coaching that impacts the business metrics specifically. With that, we're about at time. So any other questions that you have, please. Oh, perfect. On cue. Go ahead and reach out to John or Valerie, or even better yet, book a meeting with them to dive into some of these challenges that you're trying to face. And if you need some help and guidance navigating this blend of AI and human agents, because it will always be a little bit of both in there, please take advantage of that. And thank you, John and Valerie, for sharing your knowledge. And thank you, everybody, for attending.
I will say one more thing. I am in the
Sure.
market for an AI pet because this one needs to be fed, and she evidently decided that she was going to be on camera today. So this wasn't scripted, but if anybody has a good AI pet strategy, I'd love to have one. But thanks, Scott, again for having us. And again, these are some of our LinkedIn QR codes and a book a meeting code, as Scott said. But we've really enjoyed going deep on this. I think Valerie and I live this day in and day out, and it's fun to actually put things on digital paper and really work through some of these challenges because I think, again, we can share some of these experiences, or share some of the use cases, but without the experience and without the hey, we've been here and seen these pitfalls and we've been there ourselves in some of these. We hope that's helped a few of you or one of you today in a little different way about thinking about this a little bit differently. But Valerie, any last words?
Nope, none. Thank you so much for including us, Scott, and the Amplify team, and appreciate everybody attending. And we hope to continue the conversation with you.
And we will be in Vegas next week around the CCW event. So if anyone wants to get together and hash this out a little bit more over $100 at a table, Scott, or over a drink or over a cup of coffee, we'd love to chat with you.
Fantastic. Amplify will be there as well, providing the VIP room. So please stop by there to get a massage and a mimosa. And all three of us will do our best to give you Valerie's CCW version of what a Vegas VIP experience will be.
Yeah,
So
love to hear it.
thank you, everyone. Have a great
Talk to
day.
you soon. Bye.
Thanks.